It's easy enough to make a case for Vertigo as an example of an auteur film, but you can feel like you're on far less secure ground when it comes to doing the same on behalf of Arthur Penn and 1967's Bonnie and Clyde. So why is this? Well, I'm not saying Arthur Penn's a one-hit wonder or anything, but how many Arthur Penn films can you name without Googling? Okay, give up. Well, you could have had Mickey 1, starring Warren Beatty as someone on the run, very, very influenced by the French New Wave. You could have had Missouri Breaks, a Western seen by critics as a meditation on violence. You could have had his neo-noir film from 1975, Night Moves, a film that really took the temperature of the times in America. In other words, what we can find here are enough thematic constants to make a reasonable claim that, although he may not have the body of work and the acclaim of a figure like Hitchcock, Arthur Penn can still be regarded as an auteur in his own right. And yes, of course, we know that Newman and Benton came up with the original idea and script for this film, and it was always in their mind that this would be a film that would carry the influence of the French New Wave. And yes, we know that Warren Beatty wasn't just a star, he was the producer and by many accounts something of a co-director of the film on set. And yes, we know that Dede Allen was responsible for the editing of the film and in particular of that masterpiece of a final scene. Film, as we must always remember, is a collaborative medium. But it's also important to acknowledge that Arthur Penn brought enough to this film himself to be regarded as an auteur. So what was Penn's own contribution? Well, think of that influence of the French New Wave seen on his earlier film, Mickey 1. Think of that initial scene with Bonnie in her bedroom, the jump cuts, the zoom, the editing style, so very much in the influence of the French New Wave. Penn's work. Think of that deep, abiding interest in context. And remember that this is a film that doesn't just explore one context, it explores two. It was very much in Arthur Penn's thinking that this would be a film that would be rooted in the context of when it was set. In other words, Depression-era America. And for Penn, it was vital that this would be a film that would explore the desolation and despair of the Depression era. Think of the scene at the foreclosed farm. Think of the scene towards the end of the film when they run into that community of dispossessed, homeless, essentially homeless people roaming America looking for somewhere to exist. But also, as in Night Moves, Penn was taking the temperature of the 1960s, of that moment when the counterculture was starting to come to the boil. Think about the way in which this film is a challenge to convention and to conservative thinking. Again, think back to that scene at the foreclosed farm. We rob banks, those proud anti-heroes. Think of the second bank robbery scene. Is that your money or the bank's? Think of the way that scene and so many others, particularly at the end of the film, represent the figures of law and authority as either malevolent or farcically bad at their jobs, there to be mocked and to be laughed at. So, while Arthur Penn may never find himself on the Mount Rushmore of directors, unlike Hitchcock, of course, whose face is on there, but he's also up there himself doing a bit of filming. As we know, one of his auteur signatures is to film big climaxes on landmarks. It's still very, very rash and foolish to dismiss entirely Arthur Penn's contribution and influence on this film. And I would always point that out in the conclusion to any essay that compares Vertigo and Bonnie and Clyde.